I'd be curious for people who have traveled some road to the land of high quality, independent thought. What can they expect the experience to be like when they arrive there?
The experience of high quality independent thought.
Yes, if you imagine that, well, it would be lovely to think independently and to do so well, and the world is going to be a paradise if you start doing that, because, of course, that's a very desirable thing to do and people will appreciate it. You're going to be surprised. That's not necessarily what happens when you arrive there, and certain experiences show up all over the place. And without telling you what my experiences might have been, I'm curious as to what you might have encountered and whether or not those things will be similar.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think most people will experience a higher degree of uncertainty than people that are part of any camp that has figured most things out and they can cognitively offload to whoever the authorities or the general group consensus is. And certainty is certainly comfortable in a particular way. And if you're really thinking well about what is my basis for what I believe, what is the epistemic grounding, what's the basis of my confidence margin, and you really think about your confidence basis clearly, as you try to find more information to deepen the topic, the known unknowns expand faster, like at least at a second order to what the known knowns do. And so you keep being aware of more stuff that you don't know that you know is relevant and pertains to the situation. So there's a complexification of thought. There's an increase in uncertainty. Hopefully there's an emotional development and kind of a psychological development where there's an increased comfort with uncertainty so that you can actually be honest and not defect on your own sense making into premature certainty that creates confirmation bias. And there's also and I think that's why one of the reasons you use the term independent, there is a certain aloneness of not having a whole camp of people that think very similarly. I don't find that to be a painful thing, but it's a thing.
No, it's actually, in its own way, it's freeing, because the fact is, if you follow logic to natural conclusions, you'll end up saying a lot of things that are alarming or discordant with the conventional wisdom. And the world neatly divides into people who will be so enraged or thrown by what you're saying that they disappear, or maybe they become antagonists at a distance, and the people who have a similar experience and therefore aren't thrown by the fact that you're saying things that are out of phase. And so editing the world down to those who are comfortable with what they don't know, who are interested in following things where they lead, irrespective of who that elevates and who it hobbles. Those people are interesting people to hang out with. And so, yes, the alienation may be a blessing in disguise in some ways.
There's two other thoughts that came up as you were just talking. One is, I wouldn't call myself an independent thinker. I'm being particular about the semantic of the word independent. I wouldn't call anyone an independent thinker, because I think in words invented by other people. I think in concepts invented and discovered by other people. I don't necessarily have a specific school of orthodoxy from which I take an entire worldview, but almost every idea that I believe in, I did not discover. And so I think that's a very important concept, because I think the ideas we're going to discuss today regarding democracy and open society have to do with the relationship between an individual and a collective. And I think the idea of an individual is fundamentally a misnomer. Without everybody else, I wouldn't be who I am. And I wouldn't think the way I think. I wouldn't think in the language I do. I wouldn't have access to, the knowledge that came from the Hubble telescope and the Large Hadron Collider and so many things like that. So I can say that there is a certain like ultimate authority that of what I choose to feel that I believe in and trust that has an internal locus of control. But the information coming from without and my own internal processing of it are part of the same system.
So this is a perfect example of what I was suggesting up front, where two people who do whatever we're going to call this will have their own separate glossaries. So if I can translate what you've just said, I, Daniel Schmachtenberger, am not an independent thinker because such a thing is inconceivable in human form, right? And I totally agree with that. The fact is, not only are you interwoven with all sorts of humans who are responsible for conveying to you in one way or another conclusions that you couldn't possibly check. You know, these are thoughts that would be familiar to Descartes, for example. But you are also building from the entirety of cumulative human culture, right? All of the tools with which you can think are, almost all of them are too ancient to even know where their rudiments originated. So anyway, I don't disagree with any of that. So to me, I would say there is such a thing as an independent thinker. And in your schema, it has to do with whether or not they are thinking a la carte. That is to say, using that set of tools that is most effective, irrespective of the fact that those tools don't all come from one tradition. And you would say there is no independent thought because a la carte is the most you can do, or something like that.
I might say that I like a term like interdependent better because it doesn't mean that there isn't an individual involved, but it means that the individual without everyone else is also not a thing. And so the recognition that sovereignty and individuality is a thing, and it is conditioned by, affected by, and affecting other groups of people are both necessary in the Hegelian synthesis to understand what is the nature of a human. Are they fundamentally individual and then groups emerge? Are they fundamentally tribal and they're formed by the tribe? And it's very much both in a kind of